an internet world with a handful of providers that appears not to be very controllable. It's not true, but there has to be the will, the decision to do it. It'll get dealt with, and it's not that
we are
much
live
longer.
right now. We are live probably within seconds here. Make sure the audience is there, and yes, we're live. Where are you? I thought like you're going to be in a place where there's like bombs dropping or something. You know, you're a very interesting character while you're trying to have lunch or late dinner, or whatever. What part of the world are you in right now?
I'm actually in Barcelona, Spain. So, yeah, let me get my water open.
Awesome.
Crank that.
Well,
boy,
you know,
they seal the water here because there's a lot of germs in this area of the world, and so you don't want to get any of the polluted water or parasites, everything else you can get from the non-bottled water or other stuff. So, I remember years ago I had a company that wanted me to a group that wanted me to invest with them, and they were doing this thing on bottled water. And I looked at it and thought, that's the craziest thing in the world. No, they had projections. I says, it's cheaper to buy beer than it is to water the way you're trying to bottle it and do everything. I thought it was the dumbest, dumbass idea in the whole world. That was in about 1991 or two.
Wow. Well, let's try to keep our language under the radar. We are on YouTube. We are on Rumble. We are on X. We don't have to really worry too much about Rumble X too much. But even though there is some censorship going on, as you know, I'm coming out with the movie Dear Mr. President. We're going to show the trailer here probably halfway through for the audience. It is an incredible trailer. But Juan, the very first most important question I can ask you is this. Well, I have two questions. One, is the United Nations basically trying to manipulate us into a war, and are we getting dragged into a war with Israel right now? There's reports supposedly that we control the skies over Iran. Is that true or is that bullshit?
Well, the reality is that the missile sites that were on the ground that could be a threat to any aircraft over Iran have been, for the most part, all wiped out. Israel, before they even began the attack, and there's a sequence that everybody should be aware of here. I've mentioned a couple other places. Trump and Israel Trump had made the statement at the beginning of the nuclear talk negotiations with Iran. You have 60 days to figure this out. And at the end, Iran will not have a path to obtaining nuclear weapons and will not have nuclear weapons as long as we can see out in the future. It's never going to happen. So now figure it out, what you're going to do to sort that out. On the 59th day, Netanyahu had been put into a position where he had to have a vote of confidence to remain in power. That vote of confidence happened, and he remained in power. Literally within the hour, the first movements getting ready to do the attack in Iran, and aircraft began taking off to get in position for that attack. It's like the beginning and the switch from Desert Shield to Desert Storm. Saddam was given a timeline. At midnight on the day that the timeline ended, the attack began. Iran hasn't learned anything in that regard. Trump isn't mincing words, and Israel was working within a particular structure that Trump had set up. By Israeli law, once the Knesset has voted a vote of no confidence, it cannot be done for another 6 months. So that was engineered so that Netanyahu would have 6 months without having to look over his shoulder to do whatever had to be done on the Iran situation. And what Iran was doing was playing footsie. All along for the last several decades, they have push the talks, push the talks, push the talks. And if anybody's ever dealt with Persians in any type of business negotiations, they're total masters at the art of negotiation. They will shine it on until they finally get the deal that they want, um, and won't settle beforehand. They're very good business people. Um, uh, but that wasn't what was on the table this time around. And so uh, when they reached that limit, as far as Trump was concerned, he gave them a window, had an understanding. They had a clear understanding too. It was just business as usual for the Persians, for Iran and the mullahs to continue to obfuscate, while at the same time, they were literally weeks from having the first weaponized material able to build a bomb, and within 6 months have enough accumulated material close to final enrichment to have 15 bombs in the next 6 months. So the timing was absolutely of necessity. Once they had the bomb, the negotiations, as far as they were concerned, were going to be completely different. With their threats, their belief that they can bring the mullah, the Mahdi, into this world by bringing the world to the brink of destruction. The idea of them having the bomb, this maniacal group running Iran, was a non-starter. And by the way, you'll notice all of the support that Israel had on the ground and still has, even after the bombing began, by Iranians is off the charts. People dancing in the streets that these terrorist leaders have been taken out of power. And the last point I want to make, and I've said it several times over the last several days, even the last several years, Iran is this nexus of evil across the world. Yemen, the Congo, Rwanda, Venezuela, and the issues in South America up into the U.S. Um, for decades, creating, these terrorist operations, Benghazi. Um, they have sown discord through terroristic actions and supported revolutions across the world that have left the world in chaos. Just in Nigeria, the Congo, Rwanda, Yemen, Somalia, arguably, depending on how you want to look at it, somewhere between 20 and 25 million people dead in areas where Iran is in sowing evil and discord. Uh, in this current administration with President Trump, he just wants the killing to stop. Remember Zelensky? Trump had worked hard right off the bat to get an agreement to, thank you, gracias. Had worked hard to get an agreement to stop, do a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. Then they could begin to work out some type of a peace agreement over the ensuing months with U.S. assistance. Zelensky got some advice from his European handlers not to agree to a ceasefire until they had a peace agreement. Trump says, well, when you're not shooting at each other, you can focus all your energy on getting to a peace agreement. And Zelensky was advised by his advisors not to sign any ceasefire until a peace agreement was in place. When he left the White House with his tail between his legs, all pissed off, he went straight to London. Within 24 hours, was there in London, and they said, "We'll commit troops." France said, "We'll commit troops also." All their NATO buddies. Um, this is a Eurocentric operation to disrupt the whole world up there in Ukraine. But in the Mideast, it's an Iran central operation, not just to the Mideast, but to the rest of the world. And by the way, uh, uh, MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, 7 years ago, he uh, conveyed to the world his concern that Iran was a variation with a leader like Germany had in World War II, and that the world needed to understand and recognize that. This was while Saudi Arabia was in the process of normalizing relations with Israel. And the concern that many lives, death would follow if this regime was allowed to stay in power. Well, that's still true. So even the Iranian people trying to overthrow their own government back in 2008 and 9, and the Obama administration helped the mullahs. The Iranian people dancing in the street as some of these leaders and generals were taken out uh, shows where the real situation is at there in the Mideast. And Trump talking about we own the skies, um, we're seeing that Iran is starting to go a different direction. There will be regime change in Iran, and much of the mischief is going to cease, not just there in Iran, but out across the world as a different type of leadership retakes control of Iran.
Totally understood. I think out of this comes out of the ashes will rise the phoenix. I think the phoenix is going to say, "Hey, we're going to have some freedom in China, and we're going to have some freedom in Iran." I think that's the way I'm reading the tea leaves. A lot of people think there's going to be a catastrophic World War III, World War IV. I don't believe that that's going to happen. Where are you on that?
Well, and so there's a lot of prophets of doom that are foretelling some dystopian future because Iran's going to take us all down the hellhole with them. And the reality is that that's why Trump is even saying what he's saying. We're not going to allow them to drag us into this dystopian vision of the future that they have, to allow terrorism to write the headlines across the world in subtle ways with Iran in the background. Again, uh, in the Congo, while Iran's been there behind the scenes with M23 and with ISIS and the situation up in Gaza. I didn't even mention Gaza. Where'd all the missiles come from in Gaza that were hidden inside of buildings created as fortresses aimed at Israel that are the ultimate reason why Israel's gone in and just dismantled that whole region, whatever the truth is about the beginnings of that conflict. Lebanon, with hundreds of thousands, not just 100,000, hundreds of thousands. Think of the number I'm telling you of missiles aimed at Israel. All of them, every last one of the missiles hidden in Gaza, the explosives hidden in Gaza, the terrorists, and the missiles in Lebanon, having been built and shipped from Iran to the western shores and northern shores of Israel. Uh, uh, it's not just the nuclear, it's everything else. And the same thing in Yemen and in the Central Africa, these terrorist groups into Libya and other places, all being funded and assisted by Iran. The stuff into South America, shoot, the embassy blown up down in Argentina years ago uh, by a group of Iranians working out of Venezuela. And the collusion, by the way, between Cuba and Iran that nobody talks about, let alone the Chinese. There's still a couple of sites. Part of the reason that Trump and Israel aren't actually that interested in seeing this concluded too quickly. The question is, what's China going to do? Are they going to move their technicians out of the deep underground site where they're working with the Persians on the bomb? They are being given a little window to decide not to proceed at that location. And if the Ayatollah thinks he's safe in his little cave, as Trump said, we can easily hit it. Trump didn't give details, but that's what he's talking about. Um, and uh, part of the thing is, okay, if they don't want to come out, they think we got to go that deep. No, we just seal up all the exits. They'll be in there forever. How long are they going to last? Not very. Uh, and they can be snuffed out a lot of different ways. So there's a lot of behind the scenes details and drama. The other thing I would throw into the context of all of this conversation is that what isn't being spoken about right now publicly here in the West is that Iran, now Iran's leadership and their families, many of them have already bugged out and gone to Russia. Almost none of them have gone to China. China wants this to kind of continue on as a distraction from what they want to do over in the Pacific. And that was part of the plan, was to use Iran as a distraction while they continue to build out in the Pacific. We're not going to let them do that. So Trump bringing this to a head and allowing Netanyahu to bring it to a head is taking another piece off the chessboard for China. At the end of all of this, once Iran has regime change, the Mideast, much of Africa, will be taken out of the playing areas that China is strong in and reduced down to working their problems closer to home, a la Taiwan and other things in the Pacific. And that will make them much more manageable as a threat out into the rest of the world. They'll become more dangerous in some ways, but here's the other problem that China has right now that's not spoken of. China specifically orchestrated and managed the people that stole the 2020 election in America, as well as other elections all across the world, a total of 71 countries plus the United States, where the vote was stolen, captured, pirated, and people put into office
Allegedly, right? Allegedly.
I can say allegedly. Uh, I'll go to war with anybody that wants to challenge me on that.
I know, but we're on YouTube. We got to be careful.
I know. I just said it. They want to, fine.
Of course.
I'm not afraid on that because I know what the reality is, firsthand personal knowledge. So fuck around and find out. But at the end of the day, China is going to have to answer, not just to America, to dozens and dozens and dozens of populations around the world where through their mischief in collusion with other countries, they have put in place leadership which was not the will of the people in those countries. And as we go into open court, not just in U.S. controlled locations, but in other controlled locations, where the people get to hear the facts, China is going to be put on its ear because people are going to be so livid at what's been done by their hands to put people in positions of authority over them, slave masters, if you will, working the deals. Again, I go back to Congo. Rwanda amped up, ISIS fueled M23, all for what? Some mineral wealth across the Congo. And as a result of their involvement, their hidden hand behind much of what's happened in the Congo to amp up some problem children, a dozen countries, like vultures coming in to pick the bones clean in the Congo. 10 million people dead in the Congo in the last 5 to 7 years. Okay, 10 million. If you go with some of the other people and over the course of this whole conflict in that area, it's a much higher number. going back to the 60s, but China didn't have responsibility for that back in that period. Most of it's more recent, but still just an astounding figure. And of course, all the dramas going on in Yemen, in Somalia, the stuff up at Lebanon and Gaza. You know, when Beirut was blown to smithereens by that huge explosion, supposedly fertilizer just sitting there at the port. No, it was rocket fuel that was being manufactured using the fertilizer that was fueling all those rockets. You know, Iran sent the rocket components across Syria into Lebanon and into Gaza, but they had to fuel them, and the fuel was being manufactured there in Beirut next to the harbor in underground facilities. And that's what that huge explosion was. Killed thousands and thousands and thousands, and it destroyed Beirut. Well, that was Iranian. Okay, somebody did something creative to get rid of that rocket fuel factory, but at the end of the day, that was all of that energy was intended to explode in Israel in the form of rockets. Iran is behind that. The constant agitation, the constant fueling of the terrorism across the Mideast, Africa, South America. Um, uh, you know, we're putting that to an end. Trump isn't going to put up with the killing, the murder continuing, and anywhere it rears its head by any country involved. He is going to work diligently to just stop the killing. In his mind, that's the fuel for the demons, the demonic, Satan himself. And if we take away their life energy, death, murder, they're weakened greatly, these demons across the earth, across the world. And that is the beginning point of bringing peace in the world and resolving some of these conflicts. Just like he told the Iranians, figure it out, come up with a plan. We were willing to spend a lot of money in Iran offering things that didn't result in power from nuclear sites that can be hidden manufacturers of nuclear bomb grade materials. And they didn't want anything to do with that. Okay. And they didn't want to acknowledge certain sites existed and do whatever. Okay. Well, the talks came to an end. They didn't like that because they thought they were going to just shine it on for a bit. Trump was going to be like every dumbass politician before him all the way. And we said no. You mentioned the UN a moment ago, and let me just add this. The UN, as it is currently formed, was a creation of a globalista clan led by the Rockefeller brothers. And David Nelson and John D., the dad. That was done at the end of World War II. It actually started during World War II, and it was a recreation of the League of Nations, which failed. And they helped through gifts and financing and bringing their little club of friends together to create the UN. And one of the first acts done by the UN was to recognize Israel as a state in 1947. The land had been set aside by the Balfour Declaration in 1917, which was a Rothschild operation to set land aside to create a nation if you had enough of it come together to do it. And that was the Palestinian region controlled by England at the time. If you look at Albert Pike in his Morals and Dogma, the Master Mason, he lays out a plan for 3 world wars. And as a result of those 3 world wars, the last one being a religious war in the Mideast, the result of that would be to amalgamate all the nations of the earth under one governmental authority, one superpower authority run by their hidden hand. The UN is part of that dream. And in order for them to, and you have to, by the way, what was it that happened that almost threw a complete monkey wrench in that? Truman was still president. The UN had just been created. The end of World War II. Truman had, given permission for the bomb to be blown, the two bombs at Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And then we almost immediately after World War II got in this dust up with China over North and South Korea, what became North and South Korea. It was MacArthur who had to, as the supreme commander there, North Korean operations, and remember, he's the general that helped to get Japan back on a path towards stability and profitability, and set up their intelligence agencies out of Japan across Asia. It was Japan where MacArthur was when the Korean conflict began just across the water on the northwest side of Japan. And he led those operations. The problem was every time he communicated back as he was told to do, was required to do, to the White House and to Truman about what their battle plans were, where they were going, what they were doing. Mysteriously, North Korea and China, who was actually the hidden hand behind North Korean conflict, the Korean conflict, would magically be there and it would be a slaughter of his troops. So realizing that they were being short-circuited in their efforts continuously, that Washington was the problem and the leaks there as they viewed it, or the sharing of information to the UN people. MacArthur went ahead and devised a plan where they were supposedly in hot pursuit, the only situation where he could make field decisions. And in the course of hot pursuit of attacking forces, did the Incheon invasion and cut off the supply lines from China. When that happened, Truman went absolutely ballistic and claimed that MacArthur wasn't following orders, which is true, and said there can only be one commander in chief, and so fired MacArthur. Americans acted like the Iranians at the time. Mothers, wives, sisters, kids cheered MacArthur because he was going to bring this whole thing to an end. This conflict, which was a policing action in an undeclared war under UN provisions and protections, that could have continued for quite a long time. MacArthur showed that we could easily go in there and stop this. They didn't want it stopped. They wanted the UN to negotiate a peace and then maintain the peace to show how powerful the UN was, to reverse the perception that it was just another League of Nations and was bound to fail. That game is still being played today. And the supposed negotiations to keep peace and stop the murder and everything else. It's actually should be embarrassing to any person with any sliver of humanity that the UN decides how we're going to protect and preserve and stop wars. They haven't, they can't, they won't. It's a private club managing the world towards what end? A one world government run by unelected bureaucrats and intelligence agencies and royal bloodlines under the auspices of the people of the world. It's all a front. It's all a mirage. It's all foolishness. Trump has said maybe we ought to withdraw from the UN. Maybe we need to withdraw from NATO too, by the way. He's not wanting to play those games. And so be prepared for radical, dramatic, continued pushes from Trump in directions that nobody thought was viable or possible. So. Oops, I don't hear you there. Your mic might be off.
All right. I said
There we
different
go.
times, different situations, different scenarios back then versus now, but I think we have the most competent person in the White House that is able to untangle what needs to be untangled. I don't think you could find a more competent person as far as I'm concerned. And,
Well, remember this. Let me just add this one little thing here. It's
sure.
not just Trump.
Hmm.
Remember, Trump was invited to run. Well, who invited him?
The Army.
Well, not the Army. Let's be precise. Let's be exact. Trump was invited to run, and he said it was 200 generals,
Hmm.
and that actually isn't the full, complete picture. Where did those generals come from? How did they align with each other? Under what circumstances did they come together? Uh, there's been a faithful resistance going back to that time period after World War II, where the world started to go off course. There was actually communications between Eisenhower and MacArthur to counter the infiltration to within not just the military, but the American electorate, even Hollywood, by this elitist globalista crowd trying to take America off course, and including with the UN and other operations. And they saw specifically the danger by these extremely wealthy families that continued to uh, aggregate power to themselves. Remember, we had the huge fight over Standard Oil, and that was the basis for the first breaking up of monopolies. You mentioned what's going on right now, and I don't know because you got it over a certain thing. I don't want to say it, but certain corporations and groups that then control free speech. Um, there is going to be and has to be a breakup of those monopolies and even the potential of AI monopolies that
Yeah.
are going to have to be broken. So on several fronts. But in, I just had this conversation with somebody else earlier today, and I was just agitated over something where somebody was complaining because their situation wasn't being addressed immediately in what the Trump administration was doing and in their state. All these other states were getting assistance and gaining some ground, but not their state. And I had to kind of take him to task over this. And the comparison I made, and I come back to even the stuff that you have with your video there. Um, uh, in World War II, there was all sorts of pressure to just do something to stop the German advance. And so, in the course of screaming bloody murder about that and everybody pushing, they did Dunkirk. Dunkirk was a dumbass move by a bunch of dumbass generals led by one super dumbass that nearly got, 300,000 plus troops cornered and either massacred or taken captive. And World War II would not have come out the way we see it now had that not, by an act of God, been allowed to be reversed and those troops pulled out of there. Uh, when Allied Command took control of the situation, we didn't go try to get France first because it was close and they were going to come across the uh, water and take England immediately or something. The decision was to go to North Africa and then to Italy, while at the same time building up the forces for the real fight to actually have a win. And it wasn't just about sending men with a little bit of rations and some thin materials for a summer war. Okay. It was going to be a long, drawn out event. Reality was you didn't have near enough supplies or supply line to sustain that force in that location. Uh, Dunkirk itself was the proof of the asinine insanity of going right straight headlong into the main uh, thing is that you're going to divide those troops. A measured, methodical approach was necessary. Were there people that were mad that we were going to uh, North Africa and Italy first? Look, they wanted D-Day a year earlier. Had we done it a year earlier, we would not have had the success that we had when it happened. And it was understood you had to start the war in Europe while the weather was with you. After the spring rains, while things were dried out enough to be able to do those landings and move the heavy armor across those areas. That was the way it is. It just was a fact of nature. And yet you had people that wanted to go at the wrong time, the wrong place, with insufficient supplies to do the real battle. It was our ability to sustain the supply lines because we had enough initial materials there to do a real fight. And in the meantime, we were able to do attrition in key places through various guerrilla tactics to slow them down in some of their advances. They weren't able to move as quickly as they would like to have because we surgically took out key things in order to get, slow them down in their production capability. Even then, if Germany had 6 to 9 months more, they probably would have won the war with the advanced weaponry they had and the ability to build it out 6 to 9 months. That's how close it was, a race against the clock. It's similar with Iran. It's a race against the clock. And Trump wasn't willing to wait. We're not going to wait a second longer. We waited too long already. Done. That's why Trump got in there. And just as important, maybe more importantly, the people advising Trump behind the scenes explained the urgency of the situation, got agreement, and the plan was made to move forward quickly and stop this right now. So, and if Israel had faltered, stumbled in any way, we probably would have had to step in because it's Iran that's causing so much of the problems out across the world. And Iran, that's the pivot point, the tool of China. And again, think of the election here at 2024. If Trump hadn't won, if their election chicanery around the world was continued only a little bit longer, we would have been locked into electronic voting systems. Vote from your cell phone. It's so convenient. And you would never be free again on this planet. You would be under some slave master's thumb from China and supporting AIs. And ultimately, those slave masters themselves are being controlled by Eurocentric monsters, bloodline globalista, a hidden hand behind the hidden hand to control the world and take us to a one world government. And along the way, to destroy, kill, murder 13 out of 14 people alive on the planet today.
How do you see NATO play into all of this? I mean, obviously, Trump has to have some major moves to keep them at bay. What do you see happening behind the scenes with NATO?
Well, NATO, there's all sorts of drama with the NATO stuff. There's some stuff I wish I could say, but I probably shouldn't.
You probably can't.
Yeah,
Thank you.
because certain technology that's at the core of much of what we're fighting right now was leaked to Iran rather mysteriously, nefariously. Uh, you'd say, oh no, it was the Chinese that were helping them. Well, they were, but it was Pakistan that was helping. Well, they were in there somewhere. But no, some of the worst of the worst, to make sure this got done quickly and decisively because it's part of a globalist objective, came out of NATO countries. It's very, very disturbing. Most of that probably can't effectively be brought in a public venue. It will have to be dealt with nation to nation at very highest levels. But I can guarantee you Trump's going to probably deal with that. And if he doesn't feel that we're getting the right understanding, he'll declassify that, put that out to the public, let the whole world know who's really behind some of these problems. Um, and I'd love to say more. I think I shouldn't.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. I think that was enough said. Let me switch gears with you here for a second because I think you'll agree wholeheartedly. I think the biggest weapon they still have against us is to be able to control speech. True or false?
Well, speech is important. Um, yeah. um, the free speech is crucial. That's why they need a global government so they can shut us all down. Nobody's free anywhere to say what they want. They need to get past the U.S. Constitution and the constitutions of many other countries, essentially to reverse all the way back to the Magna Carta what humanity has done to bring some of these um, uh, very powerful families under control. And if you actually look at this correctly, and I don't know, it may or may not be in your show, but I think the thing that everybody needs to be mindful of, the attack on free speech um, began in its most current form with the uh, attack into communications and social media. It began when the DARPA operation, and by the way, the paper that was published privately, only within the DARPA system and to a few congressmen and senators, was that the blog project, what at that time wasn't named, to get ahead of the technology for communications person to person was needed in order to prevent groups from going rogue, essentially, in nations around the world and communications that we couldn't control. So, a LifeLog project, which cost $500 million, 100 million a year for 5 years inside the DARPA system, uh, was the basis for Facebook. When LifeLog shut down at noon on February 4th, 2004, at noon, February 4th, 2004, Facebook was incorporated and took the baton. Was given to Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg is a creation of the DARPA machine, just as Elon is, by the way. And in the sense that they were taken at some particular point and then catapulted into a much more grandiose level. First off, who had the authority, the ability, the reach to give something that cost $500 million to Zuckerberg and ultimately was a different type, not just a nuclear bomb, but a quantum hydrogen bomb? For people who like the word quantum, I don't. It's not an accurate description. But in reality, think of what it did in the way that people communicate person to person, and then the controls that slowly were implemented into those communication systems. The same thing. I'll give you one that you might want to look into more deeply. When YouTube put all of its stuff together, and of course we're on YouTube right now. So where did they put their facility out in California? And nothing's going on when you go in the offices. It's where the Spruce Goose was located previously. Hughes was the largest contractor to the CIA during the late 60s, early 70s, and of course had a Glomar explorer and things like that. And they went out and pulled up the Russian submarine, K-129. Thank you. And so here, yeah, so why is that an important observation that I think we all need to be aware of? Because when Hughes built that facility where the Glomar or where the Spruce Goose was located, he didn't like that name, by the way. Uh, the facility, he maintained the aircraft ready to fly the rest of his life, so that it, as if he was going to use it. It was, kept there, became the museum, and now it's up in Oregon. A friend of mine bought it and put it in his museum. So with that in mind, uh, uh, was that all that was there? That's where YouTube's at right now. What was really going on? Well, look at the vaults carrying communications lines and the facility itself. Is there other levels right underneath it that have been there for a very long time that were contracted out to government agencies? And if they were contracted out to government agencies back when, how did they suddenly go private? Or did they? Okay. There's a lot of mysteries there that people may want to go look into. And so why is that? Because again, I come back to the intelligence agencies being deeply involved in these things. Here, let me here you go, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. So the intelligence agencies being deeply involved there actually are still involved. See, they give contracts. How did Facebook become profitable literally from day one? They had contracts with government agencies, including DARPA, defense agencies, intelligence agencies, everything, with back doors into all of their communications. So they were already profitable. Why? Because once created, the machine got fed in order to do what it was supposed to do, which was to go out, map society, one person at a time, create a record with self-reporting. It's like the IRS, you have to self-report. You tell them I owe a bunch of money. Oh, okay. And then you sign your name to it. I promise it's true and correct. I owe you a whole bunch of money.
Right.
Okay. People self-reporting for convenience, for the fun, for the whatever. You even buy your own tracking device, your cell phone. They don't have to con you into taking a tracking device on your ankle. You allow yourself to be tracked by your own actions. So that's the kind of mischief that's going on here. And so those people which received these things, those corporations received it. They received it out of the intelligence agencies, and it was a setup. So when this is happening and we're being tracked and monitored and cowed from every angle in the world, well, wait a second. In reality, is it any of these? You could name all the, companies involved in all the mischief against this. You could name every one of them, and I guarantee I could go right down the list and show you how they're getting government contracts, money, grants, assistance that got them into business and keeps them in business. And that's why they're here. That's why we're in trouble. If your speech is being hampered, it's not because of just a company, just a Zuckerberg, if you will. It's because they're just the visible side of a much bigger plot that has ties to intelligence agencies and directors and other things. that are part of this internal fight. And let me just add this. So what's Trump's real fight here? What are we really actually seeing happen here? I'll tell you what the current problem is for Trump and the battle internally in the government of the United States. If you go back to 2020 and the election, 2 years before the election, September, I think it was 18th, Trump signed Executive Order 13848 in 2018 and said all future elections federal elections in America, Homeland Security is to throw every available resources, every needed resource into tracking and monitoring the election, any federal election, for any signs of foreign interference, and then would report back 45 days after every federal election to the president and to other certain key uh, congressional members like that, and right committees, et cetera, if there was any foreign interference in the election. So when 2020 came, 45 days after the November 3rd, 2020 election, they were required to, the Director of National Intelligence, which runs Homeland Security, there's 16 intelligence agencies that were compartmentalized before 9/11. NSA, National Security Agency, the largest of the bunch, 10 times the budget of CIA, by the way. CIA, FBI, National Reconnaissance Office, DEA, et cetera, cyber intelligence, CISA. All these agencies, which were separate, compartmentalized. If you were a spy trying to get into America, you might get into a person in this agency or that agency, get a little information here or there, and then you'd have to roll it all together because of compartmentalization and different management structures. Hard to get into all of them. When you put them all under one heading at Homeland Security after 9/11, it aided a highly centralized shadow government state like SES, Senior Executive Service, in controlling so many more areas of society. And it was done through the Director of National Intelligence Office, the 17th agency of Homeland Security, the one that coordinates all the other 16. So in 2020, Director Radcliffe, Director of the National Intelligence agency, if you will, the Homeland Security, he said at 42 days after the November 3rd election, he says, gosh, to the media, doesn't even call Trump directly. I don't think I'm going to be able to give my report at 45 days. A lot of the people in this audience will remember it was palpable. We were all sitting, waiting with bated breath to hear what would come out of Director of National Intelligence's office. Okay. Radcliffe's office about election interference, because we all heard about it. We all knew it. There was something wrong. There's no way that Biden won the election. No possible way. Can't possibly be. And 3 days before he's supposed to give the report to Trump that's going to help this whole thing get sorted out, Radcliffe says, I guess a couple of the agency heads that work here at Homeland Security, head of the FBI, head of CIA, head of National Reconnaissance Office, a bunch of them aren't willing to give me their reports. He doesn't name exactly who, just some of the agency directors aren't going to give their report to me. On what basis? Well, some think that Trump is still a spy for Russia, even though we just went through several years proving it was a Hillary Clinton campaign plot. using a law firm and a bunch of money of questionable origins to set up the whole dossier bullshit, which was run, by the way, out of the city of London. Brits and all that other intelligence agency bullshit, bankers, etc., to damage the Trump candidacy and presidency. And so this is an important point. I think people have to slow down and hear what I'm going to say here. When they didn't provide that, Radcliffe said he was not going to be able to provide the report on time, but he did say that there was foreign interference in the 2020 election. We just don't know if it was enough to throw the election yet. So that's when Trump invited everybody to come to Washington, D.C. To be present, not to protest, to be present when Congress was going to vote on the election, bring all the electors into Washington, D.C. and certify the vote on January 6th. And just be present. Do you know that that was the largest assembly of the American people in U.S. history in Washington, D.C.? The low estimates are 1 million. The high estimates, when you look at the broader area and everything that happened, was closer to 2 million people present in Washington, D.C. on January 6th of 2021. And then all the drama, which history will show, I guarantee it. I'm not even qualifying this. That was a plot to allow that the vote would continue no matter what to certify the election, in spite of the fact that there was pretty well coordinated opposition to proceeding with that vote, that several states were going to come in and request that the electors be sent home. And Ted Cruz led that even before they started the count, asking for a 10-day delay to verify information from the states was accurate with the electors coming forward, and the information on the vote counts in those states was accurate. They were going to challenge that. 10 days, and this had been done previously back in the 1800s. That's what the Brunson case is all about. Congress certified an election without first verifying the legitimacy of that vote and placed America and the world in peril. And all of those that voted without first verifying the information violated their oaths of office to protect against all enemies, foreign and domestic. With that in mind, going back to where I was at with Radcliffe, Radcliffe didn't provide that report timely till after Congress did their certification on January 6th, which was, Congress voted without having the intelligence information from the largest intelligence gathering machine ever created in the history of mankind. The 16 agencies plus the Director of National Intelligence Coordinating Office of the largest intelligence gathering machine that exists on planet Earth didn't have that knowledge when they voted on January 6th, didn't want it, because it would have shown what the problem was. So Radcliffe should have, by the way, provided an interim report, which is what the executive order calls for, and noted those agency directors who had, of their own volition, with no legal authority, zero, zip, zilch, no legal authority or basis, morally or legally, they committed the insurrection. They refused to provide the intelligence work product of their agencies to the Director of National Intelligence, who would have then provided it to the Commander-in-Chief under the auspices that Trump was a foreign agent. Remember, Brennan led the parade just before the debate with Biden, where you had 51 intelligence officers, all saying that Hunter's laptop was an obvious foreign Russian disinformation plot. When that
Sure.
had already everybody knew, including
Yeah.
behind the scenes at FBI, that it was valid, it was legitimate, it was legitimately Hunter's material, and there wasn't any Russian involvement in trying to create a false story there, information which would have also affected the election. Why am I bringing that up? Because within the intelligence gathering agencies, at the top and down through the ranks, they were fighting Trump remaining in office. They were fighting Trump being in office, not because he was a Russian plot, but because he was a direct threat to the entrenched powers that be within the machine, who, by the way, owe their allegiance to the shadow government operations. In many of the most important cases, including the directors, they receive additional off the books salary and retirement plans from senior executive service. They're not
Yeah.
their own people.
Yeah.
And that is the shadow government. That is the group that is hijacking and pirating the operations here in America. And the only thing which they have not, they claim to have control of, but they don't have physical control of, just that they've passed all sorts of little rules and stuff inside their own operations that say they control the nuclear in a situation where there's continuity in government needed. No, there's still a loyal, faithful percentage of the people within those operations that have not acquiesced to the capture and takeover by senior executive service within the government of the United States of America.
Totally.
That is the challenge. So then I go back to currently, even though Tulsi Gabbard now is the director of national intelligence over at Homeland Security, she's in charge of getting all the data from all the various agencies over at Homeland Security, collating it and presenting it to Congress, presenting it to the president. Okay. So you have the information you need to be a commander in chief. Although Tulsi is there, and you have people like Cash and Pam Bondi in these various agencies, down through the ranks, there's still huge resistance, pushback on the part of people in those agencies to not cooperate with, to do every possible thing to gum up the works in this Trump administration. I'll use this as an example. Cash wasn't in as FBI director yet. Bondi was over at the Justice Department. Trump orders Bondi to release everything on the Epstein case. Put it all out there. Just let it out there. Let the public know what's going on. Bondi doesn't have everything over at the Justice Department on the Epstein case. She sends a note over to the FBI. Give us everything on the Epstein case so that we can honor President Trump's order to release all the Epstein stuff. FBI sends her over like a page, an inch and a half of paper, supposedly everything on the Epstein case. Says, I want everything. I want the evidence. I want the reports. I want the investigative notes. I want everything, pictures, videos, whatever you got. I want it right now. They don't give it to her. Where's it at? It's at the Southern District of New York FBI offices. And they're not giving it up. That's where the investigation was on. They've pulled it all over there, okay? So when Cash gets sworn in, she sends a terse note over to Cash, not aimed at Cash personally, but just as a marker in time. And she says, I want all of the information in the FBI's custody, want everything, original material, etc. And I want it now. And by the way, certain FBI personnel have been blocking us from getting that information, which was done lawfully and correctly within my office as at the Justice Department here, and by authority of the president. So when you do go get the stuff you're going to go get cash, I also want to know what disciplinary actions you intend to take for those personnel at the FBI who participated in the cover-up. I'm using that word personally, it's not in her letter, in blocking us from getting that information. Cash can't just get him to release it. He has to take a tiger team down there and bust the door in and grab all the information. Initially, it was said, well, it was like a truckload. No, it was like 2 truckloads. And then it wasn't everything. In going through the information, they found another hidden location where they had way more materials. And they went and got that. In other words, you had personnel inside the FBI in very senior positions that were blocking even the FBI director, let alone the Justice Department, from getting the materials that the new CEO, President of the United States, Commander-in-Chief, ordered them to release to the public.
Right.
Now, there's some people still hand-wringing that Pondy is covering up and they're not letting out. No. They got all this material, and in order to do it without damaging people who may otherwise actually be innocent or victims. Remember, not everybody that went to Epstein Island was a bad guy before or after they went. The whole point of Epstein Island was honeypots, blackmail, extortion, bribery, embezzlement, okay?
Yeah.
People went there and they thought they were going there to, hang out, rub shoulders with others that may have similar interests.
Right.
She had college professors going there. Epstein wanted to start his own DNA family, out through time with impregnating young girls. Okay.
Yeah. I want you to hold that thought. Yeah. I want you to hold that thought and continue when I tell you to continue, please. I want to give a shout out to Carol Maureen, who's the executive co-producer of our wonderful documentary called Dear Mr. President. She's here from Costa Rica. Welcome, Pura Vida. And I want to tell you guys, if you guys want to contact me strictly for business, you want to buy a lot of cryptos, whatever, 786-704-8817, nothing less than $10,000. Okay, 786-704-8817. Send me a text message first. Also, if you want to volunteer to get us into mom and pop movie theaters, we want to release the movie free of charge, zero cost. It's not a profit center for us. Anywhere in the United States, Los Angeles, New York, Miami, obviously Dallas, Chicago, major cities will be great. And also, if you want to download the actual original 2 weeks before it gets released on the internet, you go to dearmrpresident.net, not .com, dearmrpresident.net, and you download it directly through WeTransfer. You'll get the highest quality. You can have watch parties at your house, or if you have a corporate business or something, and you have a lot of members, invite them in. The churches, anything, I just want to get it out as quickly as possible and grow a lot of legs. I want to play the video real quick for you. I don't know if you had the opportunity. I know you're one of the busiest guys on the planet, dear 107, but this is definitely.
No, I'd love to see it. Go ahead.
Okay. Tell me if you can see what I see. Yes?
Yep, got it.
Perfect. All right, and let me hit the play button.
In a nation founded on liberty, the right to speak is slipping away. From the airwaves to algorithms, America's voice is being stifled by corporations, by platforms, by fear.
Censorship. It's a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years.
One man dared to fight back with a letter to the president.
The idea of the letter turns into a full-blown documentary.
the American people are demanding to see arrests at this point because we have the proof beyond a shadow of a doubt. I want to see, I think I speak for the American people. I think you guys would agree. If we were to put together a really cool email, but not send the email because that email will never get sent, but turn it into an audio and put it all over the internet and have the patriots just move it out there. Okay. I mean, like, let it spread out there like crazy until it gets to Donald Trump and let them know the American people want to see fucking arrests. The people of the world want to see arrests. Because I'll tell you what, the people of other nations are waiting to invite in, okay, DOGE, because if you think it's only happening in the United States of America, you're making a big mistake.
His words sparked a movement among podcaster and various patriots, a call to reclaim free speech. I wrote to the president because silence isn't freedom, it's surrender. Silence no more follows one man's bold solution to confront censorship head on and the ripple effect shaking the nation. This letter isn't just words, it's a challenge to the system. One letter, one voice, one chance to change everything.
Now, if you thought that that was powerful, I can assure you that Maureen will probably agree with me that the actual. Oh, let me stop sharing this.
That is.
All right, let me exit that window. Basically, I can tell you that the actual documentary is a lot more powerful than the actual trailer itself. Maureen will absolutely test that because we got to watch what's potentially going to, a lot of it's going to end up being in the finished product. So let me go ahead and exit this window here. I have to walk myself through these stupid applications. I apologize. There we go. Okay. Delayed reaction. So what did you think of that? Did you get a chance to watch that while we were showing it to an audience of probably
Well,
over
the only thing, and I think it's the point of our conversation thus far, and what I'm trying to convey here, and I think it's you have to look beyond the individuals and the corporations that are behind the censorship.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, it's something even more grotesque than has been put on the table so far. It's government agencies and these little fiefdoms. Again, remember, who blocked the American people in the world from knowing what the result of the investigations were done by executive order, Executive Order 13848? Who blocked the release of that information so damning it would have given Trump the presidency, by the way, and stopped the certification of the 2020 election? Who stopped that? It was agency heads of the intelligence agencies, all 16 of them, or some majority of them, that blocked that information from getting the American people. That was the true insurrection. And they did not have the authority to block that, but they were running these intelligence agencies their way. The DARPA thing, if you get to the truth of what happened with Facebook, and if you get to the truth of who's actually running that project from the shadow government side and the SES side, then you get to the true origins of the censorship. The censorship isn't coming from even the agencies directly. They're being managed behind the scenes to participate in a global effort with many other countries' intelligence agencies being captured operations just like ours are in moving the world towards this global East, a new world government operation. And these hidden hands behind the scenes that want to control every aspect of life on the planet in preparation to shut down all the life which isn't theirs, to depopulate the earth and start it over with only their families, their minions, owning control of the direction of the planet. The shutting down of free speech is the starting point for all of that. Because if you can't communicate about what you're seeing truthfully, if you can't have an honest conversation about what these people are doing, then you can't stop it.
Exactly.
See, when you stop the people talking about, and because we're on YouTube, the thing in the arm, when you stop the people talking about who's really behind, say even Epstein Island.
Correct.
See, Epstein wasn't working in a vacuum. Epstein Island was 3 different intelligence agencies coordinating their efforts to bring targeted individuals to the island for blackmail, honeypotting, embezzlement, bribery, etc. That was a CIA, MI6, Mossad operation to capture and control how these people functioned and worked in their various positions. Think of the university professors. Why would you bring university professors there? Because the results of their programs, the direction that they would go in their research was controlled from that position. So you could have a narrative that says, yes, global warming is real. And vaccines don't cause brains to swell and cause childhood problems. Okay, even if you give them 50 shots, give them 100 shots, no problem. You could control key people at key places in ways that weren't seen directly, because they'd be your tool, and you wouldn't understand how they're a link in a chain that somebody else has captured. Um, Stopping those conversations where maybe if it wasn't for controlled media, we might have got to Epstein way sooner. But
Absolutely.
the media wouldn't let you cover it, and you couldn't be blessed and allowed to, have advertisers on your channel to, be able to afford to go out and promote these thoughts, ideas, information. So, I think the cancellation of the free speech is far more nefarious than just the media access points and communication points that are normally covered. It is an insider plot, just like the plot not to allow us to have the information about the stolen election by the very same people and groups, and they're all inside the government.
Yeah,
Those
and I get
those
the fact that
companies are
they're being
being managed
yeah,
from behind the scenes
yeah.
in ways that you don't fully see up front.
No, I understand the honeypots. I understand the blackmail. I understand all of it. Believe me, and I'm sure the audience understands it too. But the reality is, there's one man that's got the biggest grapefruits in
Okay,
the
but
world.
here's where I'm going with this.
Yeah,
And you're correct. It's just like what we're going to have to do, whether we're talking 9/11, Maui fires, the California fires, and 100 other similar, much smaller incidents around the planet where military technology has been applied in ways that you can't get to through normal investigative process. In fact, trying to stop these monopolies on communication through the courts, not happening. It's are you going to have a break up the monopolies by the courts like you had with Standard Oil? They haven't shown any desire to do that. And again, why would that be? Because at the end of the day, the government wants it. The people
sure.
in power in government want it. What Trump is here to do is not to fight the bullshit, not to go get mucked up in the bullshit. He's here to kill the fucking bull.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I want to
Yeah,
help him kill the bull.
that's Trump as the Magador. Well, who is the bull? See, if you're
Yeah,
not targeting it correctly, if you're just saying it's one of the media groups or social media communication points, you've just been boxing with mirrors. Okay, you're not
Totally.
actually getting to the real problem. The real problem, and by the way, this is McAfee. Okay, you have to understand, McAfee was, you know, he was eccentric. Tell me Zuckerberg isn't. Tell me that Elon isn't. Okay, he had his own quirks in his own way. But what really tweaked him, no end, was that here he was trying to provide a security tool for the average person to keep all the bugs out of their computer, out of their programs. The problem is as he got into it, the worst offenders were not somebody in grandma's basement in their underwear writing a bug. It was the intelligence agencies forcing companies like his to put back doors in everywhere. And then, even though it was only for national security in the most extreme situations, blah, 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 just like the failed FISA courts didn't protect America and the world from the false claims of these investigative agents on the Russia stuff. And they just let them go berserk. They weren't protecting the average consumer from government backdoors where the bugs were coming in through. They weren't coming in through the front door, they're coming in through the back door. And it was all government agency access points that they were forced to put in those systems. So McAfee was trying to keep that to a minimum. He was fighting that along the way. And then he got the wild hair and said, well, you want to have back doors? I'll give you back doors. He puts a worm in there and gets everything from all the government agencies, and he finds stuff that he didn't himself expect to find. He was going to prove how they were backdooring everything and hurting the consumer, and he finds out in all these government agencies they're doing a lot worse than just backdooring computers. They're backdooring little kids, and in horrendous ways. And a lot of these officials are involved in it. That's what drove him crazy. That's what got him going down there cruising around Epstein Island, sending his, at the time, $35,000 drone over the island to film everything. Yeah. Okay, so now you have to go. Okay, so he was a pretty smart guy. He made a lot of money. He was fighting the system. He was fighting the IRS and everything else. Was he exactly wrong? He did have an understanding, and he was in his own way. Because remember, see, today, maybe he could, in a Trump administration, have gotten a little further in. But at the time, when he started this journey where he started to go off the rails and got ran out of his own company, there was no direction where you could go and get any kind of legal assistance support inside the justice system, the military, anything. And because they were, as soon as you start saying we want to shut down the back doors in all of these places, and the monitoring of every citizen every way possible, and the march towards AI, that was a non-starter. Most of these agencies, he's just become the enemy. When you say it today, with the exception of a handful of people that have just now gotten into power, the majority still look at you as the enemy if you say you want to get in and start toning down the blockages to free speech. Well, and having an honest conversation. We have standards. There's certain things that we're not going to allow, and we have pretty good laws for that. But to then just monitor that you can't say anything like, hey, I have a whole class of people, a whole group of people that are having severe reactions. Can we communicate about what those reactions look like to something that we're mandated to all get? No, you can't do that. You can't create a board where you start correlating the reactions and see similitudes with people that had pre-existing cancer, with people that are pregnant, with people that are young or old and may have other conditions that need to be considered before you force them to take something on, not just in America, across the world. Look, we're America. Whole world is looking to us. If we can't have an honest conversation, what's going to happen in the rest of the world? where the whole country's built on the ability to have free speech.
Yeah.
We can get shut down. It's bad here. It's on steroids and worse in places like Australia or places across Europe and other countries where they'll stand on the arms of a teenager just to stick him in the arm. You kidding me? Asinine, insane. That all starts with not being able to have an honest conversation to compare notes at every level. So, and then even in the social media, we're supposedly able to have a private conversation in your own little room and discuss stuff. No, you can't, because somebody's there to report on you and stop you. So, within what you're doing, the only thing that I would say, if there's even a follow-on, the request to President Trump has to be precise. It has to not be generic. The request is not just to go after those media companies, but that every agency of government and individuals within these agencies of government who are assisting and participating in blocking open communications and stopping open conversations in these social media, open conversations in the broadcast media. If there's any collusion with any government agencies or members, uh, that has to also be investigated, and those that are involved illegally prosecuted.
100 trillion percent.
Most of what they're doing is illegal from within those agency positions. They're doing things they don't and never had the authority constitutionally or legally to do. Now, the other thing that's going to be your request should not only go to President Trump, it should go to Ed Martin over at the Weaponization of Government Department, which Trump created, over at the Justice Department, because this is weaponization of government. And your request should not be generic. Just there, stop the blockages of free speech. Where you have people that hear this, who are in government, who are aware of other government actors assisting and participating with these agencies, and you have communications, those should also be forward. Much of that information is already out in the public. So I would attach some of that information we already have out in public, including stuff that was testified to before Congress, which, yes, it's in the open, but you have to add it as a formal part of your request as a reference point. Then the other thing you don't have that must be there, I'm sorry, it must be there, besides the American citizens, which have a legitimate right to ask for these investigations from the president and from the Justice Department, weaponization of government with Ed Martin, you need to find every state and federal congressman or senator holding public office, and if you can find any of them, governors, to attach their name to this request to the president and to the Justice Department. And there's a legal reason why. At the Justice Department, many investigations cannot be done just willy-nilly. There has to be some initiator. And if the initiator is a congressperson or a senator, asking the Justice Department to look into a specific manner, they can't just blow it off. There's certain priorities. It's understood that they're the legal representative of a large segment of the population, a majority of the voters in the area that they're from. So when they ask for something over at the Justice Department, it's not them asking. It's their constituents asking, and they, as their representative, are making this inquiry. Then the Justice Department can apply way more money, authority, urgency to a request that has a congressman or senator attached. So we have something that we're working on right this second that I'll talk about with somebody that's everybody knows, but I don't want to let the cat out of the bag today, where we've had to do that in order to trigger the right types of response over at Justice Department, where even some of the players involved want to do something, but they haven't had the correct initiating factor present, and they will within days. Yours can also include that. And this isn't a mealy-mouthed cheeseball thing. Ask your senator, ask your representative. No, 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 no. If you have serious people, they're always careful to put their names to things like that. They don't want to do it because, unless it's very political and all that. So if they do attach their name to something like this, a letter like this, it's a well thought out thing. They've weighed it. They know there's going to be media attention. Those that are of a mind and will to add themselves to the letter, that puts them in an alliance, even with your listeners, to the people that would participate, because now you know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. Because if they won't attach their name to a letter like this, what do they want to keep going? What do they want to protect? What don't they want exposed and what's going on? How's Trump know who's behind him and who isn't? You're asking Trump to do something he already has said he wants to do. You're just giving him kind of an official ingress point to do it. Why hasn't he done it already? Well, he actually has. If you look at the executive orders, executive actions thus far, he's opened the door in these areas. What we actually need is an official investigation under the auspices of weaponization of government into social media and media networks against the free speech of Americans, unconstitutionally blocking Americans from having an honest conversation, including, we had an FCC that was pretty good at, allowing stuff into the communications for a lot of years, even with Mockingbird operations messing it up. That's going to have to come into the social media. And the weaponization of government direction is the one that I believe that's the most powerful. They need also over there more funding within that department, and I think Trump will increase that. And then to anybody out there that is a practicing attorney who has litigation, not just wannabe, not just got out of school. I'm sorry, not saying anything against you, but the reality is anybody that has actual experience as a litigator, able to, get in there and have the fisticuffs, who has been around, got a little bit of time on the saddle. Justice Department.
We're losing you.
Reach me. I'll call him back here in a few minutes.
Oh, I can get there.
Yeah, I had to send Trennis Evans out to, outer space here for a minute. I'll call him back in just a second here. Good friend. I can't block the calls on StreamYard. So at the end of the day, I think those will help you to be much more effective at what you're doing, and in honing the right ask. If you just, let me just say this, and because I want you to be effective.
Mm-hmm.
You think of the kid, young guy, during the Tiananmen Square protests, and they're bringing tanks into Tiananmen Square. He's not there as a protester. He's there. He's got business in the area. And he sees the tanks going, and it's against the will of the people. The people are there protesting. They're violent. They're not, trying to burn the place down. They've got Statue of Liberty, mock, outfits and things like that, looking for American assistance like that. It's all being broadcast. And the tanks are headed for Tiananmen Square. And the guy jumps out in front of a lead tank and he's waving his briefcases. No, no, no. And he's pleading with the driver to, as a fellow citizen, not to participate, not to do this. The tank driver stopped. The cameras are running. The guy isn't going to run down a civilian right in the middle of the street and create, a drama. That guy stopped it, but at the end of the day, his actions were futile, and he paid a price for it. The world saw it, but at the end of the day, it was ineffectual at stopping what happened next. You don't want to be that guy. If you're going to go and ask the president to do something who is on our side on this issue, you need to have certain form and function that gives it weight more than just, hey, look at our great thing and we're all together and we're all happy and a bunch of us are here protesting. It at the end of the day won't have a lot of weight. You need to bring in the representatives of the people as well as the people.
Yes.
Because part of the thing is they'll say, well, so we got 10,000 letters. This is a country of 350 million people, and we can't change everything for 10,000 letters. Well, if you have a representative, if you have a senator, if you have a state representative or senator, by the way, as well as the federal, they represent huge swaths of people, millions of people in one person. Right. Add their names to the letter and ask them to also send it directly. You'll send it formally to the president and to Ed Martin and ask for intervention by the president. And by the way, this is a national security matter. Stopping our free speech is a national security matter. I would like to see the president wearing his chief of police cap. See, when you do actions internally aimed into the country as the president of the United States, he's like the chief of police running the Justice Department and the intelligence agencies and everything else. So he's the chief of police directing operations internally into America. But the threat against free speech is global. And the people trying to stop us from this free speech, the effect of these agencies and companies and individuals has global reach. I would ask that President Trump first look at this matter as a policing matter, wearing his commander or his chief of police hat, but then to take that hat off, put on the hat as the commander in chief, and in fact, I'd even put on the jacket, okay, because it's a really cool jacket.
Yeah.
As commander in chief. And then sign the executive order. We're going to go track down all of those people within our governmental machine who are acting in an unconstitutional manner. You weren't hired. You didn't have that authority. Nobody said that in your job description to do the things they're doing to block free speech. And in fact, it's patriot. It's patriots. It's patriotic.
Totally.
When they have free speech and communicate person to person. And here's the last thing I want to put in there. And this is a very important point. I apologize. Let me walk over you for a second. The other reason why you have to have free speech, the way that we're getting stopped in this march forward, future of humanity stuff, is that AIs, artificial intelligence, is taking over the planet. In fact, when the rest of it comes out somewhere in the future, it'll be many years down the road probably before we talk about it. But it was AIs that we revealed with false, non-identities that were running things over at Twitter and the advertising, things like that. It was in a response to get ahead of a planned media driven social media thing for the 1 year anniversary of J6 that helped to expose all of the bots and false posts and like that got in front of that so they couldn't have their little heyday villainizing American patriots for showing up the previous year on J6. And that laid the basis, the groundwork for Elon to come in and do what he did and buy it, where he thought he was going to get a deal and not. But it's a story for another day. At the end of the day, but I can tell you exactly how much it cost to the penny. Ouch. With that in mind, the reality is that this is an attack on our national security. The reason America works is because the American people are informed and then may make informed decisions, including who they vote for, because of what they say they're going to do and or do not. As a matter of national security, not just for here, but across the world. When we're blocked from having honest conversations, people are able to rise to power and do things that put the world at risk. You think it's just terroristic conversation that is being managed and controlled, but that's not the truth at all. When we can't have an honest conversation, we can be maneuvered with what we do here to come to wrong conclusions and to make lousy decisions. The security for the commander in chief, the security for all the politicians across America in large measure is that they have an informed electorate that will stand with them because they understand issues and will not back down from them because they understand what's going on and the consequences, good or bad, of any action, including if we have to go to war, things like Iran and the Israeli side and the U.S. side and everything else. If we can't have an honest conversation, we can't come to reasoned, intelligent conclusions, and we can be conned and diverted and mimicked into doing something that actually places us at greater risk, because these illusions can be presented in such a way that they look very convincing. We break the illusions and get to the facts and the truth by having honest conversations. The most difficult piece in this modernizing world that we're coming into is AIs who are being run by megalomaniacs, small and large, who then are able to throw way over their weight. They're able to manipulate huge swaths of communications and data, monstrous swaths, as just an individual. You could have 30, 100, 500 people on the planet controlling key conversations that appear to all the world to be billions of people agreeing with something, going a certain direction. How do we defeat that? Person to person, with no AI in between, with no electronics in between. That's how you defeat the AI. And our communications tools, without restrictions and screening by AIs, where every key word, key phrase, thought is screened before you're allowed to get it to somebody else. Choking down our conversations to only allowed for conversation. And the AIs, you don't have to have a human doing it. You don't have to have tens of thousands of monitors like you had in Russia or China, where every house, every apartment building had 1, 2, 3 people on the payroll for any word you said, anybody you contacted, anything that you were engaged in, or a piece of paper you carried home that you could be reported on. They get a cookie, they get a dog biscuit for giving good information. It just builds out from this tiniest little thing. That's AI. One word, not even necessarily in context, and you're out. Okay, how do you defeat the AIs? You have to do it person to person. What we have to do, and you're on the right track with this request, this presentation, this documentary, is we have to be able to communicate openly, person to person, have an honest conversation. Look, I had a situation, I don't know, probably 7-8 months ago, where the person that I was engaged with was absolutely not somebody that I would normally engage with. And we were together for several hours unexpectedly. And they had some racist views that were extremely disturbing. But we had an opportunity to communicate, and I took the opportunity. We communicated for a long time. We did not part agreeing, but we at least had the conversation. And then here about 3 weeks or so ago, I happened to be in contact with him again. And he thanked me and said, I had to rethink some of the stuff. And I guess I was in my own bubble with the people around me. And I'm kind of processing, but maybe I didn't really agree with those things. And I'm going to have to rethink it. So he'd at least started a journey. He was a very racist person, and some of his history led him into that. And I said, got to pray about it, man. You profess to be somebody that believes in God and heaven. Seriously. And it was leading him to some horrible places that I think were going to destroy his life. And I said that very directly. It was only a direct conversation without anything in between that even brought it to the point where we could maybe come up with some, banter back and forth and get there. That's person to person. If the machine is not letting us even have the starting point of a conversation, then maybe we're all lost. We defeat the AIs by direct conversations and without controls. And all of these media groups that are censoring using AIs to decide what we can or cannot talk about is the greatest threat to American ideals, Americana of them all. So even for elections, we have to get the AIs out of the elections. We have to have an honest vote. We have to get rid of the machines. That's why we have to vote in person, hand counted paper ballot, counted where cast, not transported from the place where the vote was done. Smaller precincts, 1,500 or less, no central statewide voting center aggregation locations. I don't care if it's in the police cruiser's trunk, the fireman's truck, or Granny's knitting basket. No moving votes around in this shell game, these magic acts. Hand counted paper ballot, counted where cast, precincts of 1,500 or less, 1 day vote. Trump has said maybe 2. I think that's going to be defeated before it's over anyway. But, and then when we have an honest vote, I think that the people will force all of their representatives and their government to do what Trump's already doing. Look, he had his cabinet meeting, several of them now, where he lets them be broadcast. Everybody gets to see what the various people are saying. Tulsi Gabbard, a month ago, in the cabinet meeting with the president and the other cabinet members, says to President Trump, Mr. President, we now have proof of a stolen election. Well, why did she say that? Because for the previous 3 days, 3.5, actually 4 days, previous 4 days, 3.5 days were spent briefing her inner circle of people over at Director of National Intelligence Office and people from other agencies. They were briefed on the work that was done from outside the United States to steal the 2020 election and attempting to steal the 2024 election. And other elections, other places around the world, including South Korea, by the way, last April. They had not a hour-long briefing, not an hours-long briefing, 3.5 days. And then at the conclusion, Tulsi was personally briefed in a summary briefing with other people also present for 3.5 hours. So the next day after that, she's in the cabinet meeting. She got all these briefings in preparation for that cabinet meeting with the other cabinet members and President Trump at the White House. And she says to the president, we now have proof of a stolen election.
Be careful. Be careful. Yes.
So, and you've seen the YouTube clip saying that. I'm just saying what has been allowed out at YouTube already.
Yeah.
And then she says in this short, brief clip, it's just like you said, Mr. President, and you can find the clips on YouTube still, and they haven't taken them down. So I'm not saying anything that YouTube hasn't already allowed to go out there.
Yeah, but some people are allowed to talk and some people are not allowed to talk.
I do understand. So let me just say this, go find it.
Yeah, I will go find it.
And see what she says next. And the reason why what she said next is so important is because she reiterated to the president, it's just like you said, Mr. President. So what did she say after that? We're going to have to, and I'm not going to say it, so you don't have to panic. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to do something the president already advised the cabinet that is where he's going and what he's going to have to do. And what's the result of that? It defeats AIs in our election. The same principle defeats AIs blocking all of our conversations. Okay? Person to person, no machine in between.
Yeah.
Okay? There you go. That's what we're going to have to do.
Where do you find you? TheJenniferMac.com. The address is still the same, correct? TheJenniferMac.com.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to interrupt you, even though that we have a rude person here saying, I thought you were going to cut him off and do what you do best, Mel, and blah, 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 and all that bullshit. But the reality is you were on a roll, and what you had to say was extremely, extremely of great importance. And I hope that Carol Maureen over in Costa Rica was taking notes, even though we have it recorded. We can go back and take notes. But yeah, we are definitely moving in that direction.
Well, by the way, Costa Rica, when the rest of the information comes out, some of it is coming out not too far in the distant future. Costa Rica and certain key players in Costa Rica will be absolutely monumental in the process of disclosure of what happened with the election interference from outside the country by China, by the way, specifically. So some of that, Costa Rica is not a bit part player in some of what's about to happen. It's going to be an absolutely amazing thing. Yeah. I mean, to give you a context, a core to this, when certain things happen in the not too distant, I'm talking long weeks, not long months, okay, as the summer winds on into the early fall. What's going to happen is so monumental that for generations in the future, people will consider those releases, those specific events, to be the marker before and after. Not just here in America, but across the world, when the understanding of what China has done, including towards our free speech. How you vote is a vote. It's your speech in the form of a vote, what you want and how you want it and who you want to do it. You realize that's free speech, a free vote. Right. And so, and the manipulation even into how broad populations think, the information they get to make those types of decisions affect the free speech in the form of a vote. Yeah. After disclosure and the first arrests in that specific area related to election manipulation, people around the world will forever mark that as the beginning of the total change, not just in America, but across the world. That's when the first real change in direction of the ship of state and ships of state, the fleet, across the world began. You try to turn a ship at speed. Ouch. Okay. If I turned the wheel hard and 200 tons, I'd have put that thing on its side. It'd have been a disaster. You have to slow it down and then turn it, even with the side thrusters and like that. And if you're in a narrow location, you need to slow it down radically and then make the turn so you don't go into shallow waters or obstructions or other vessels and things like that. So as we make these turns that are coming, you'll see things slow down in certain ways, make the turn, and then speed back up. We're changing course for the whole fleet. And as you have more ships, by the way, it becomes even more convoluted and complex because you have all sorts of waveforms and everything else that can be introduced. So we're doing that. We're going to change the way that the world is going. And people will remember this moment over what's coming with the vote stuff and the revelations. And it's going to be so extreme, so radical, so dramatic and dynamic that it will disrupt the whole world, turn it on its ear.
Yeah.
But it's necessary and it's a good thing. And we're at the right place in that. And as a result of it, you're going to get much better access to meetings, stuff like that. In fact, even your show is part of that. Offering an alternative for open conversation that's not there in the majority of the rest of the mainstream media. And so, you and your listeners, even the choice by listeners to listen to your show is a vote for free speech and going against the controls that have been put in place.
Absolutely. Well, I need everybody to give us a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithms. To what extent, I don't know, but I'm not giving up fighting this free speech fight, and we're going to win come hell over high water. If I can have some of my people get in touch with some of your people, if you can give me the green light on that, Juan, I would like to see if you can connect. I know you connected me with Senator Fincham, and I'm forever grateful. And out of that came Representative Leo Biasucci, and I'm sure there'll be more to come from that connection as well. But if you can connect us to other people that will get behind this film, I promise you it's not going to embarrass you. As a matter of fact, you think I'm the Francis Ford Coppola of documentaries after this comes out. I had no idea that we even had a knack for this. It turns out that we do. And it is an incredible 5-star documentary, hands down. I will tell you that if you can connect this to a few people, so I like the direction. That's why I didn't interrupt you. I did that specifically intentionally because what you said is.
Well, let me just name
important.
a few of them that I think would be willing to do something. Start with, RFK Jr. He did a suit over this related to the vaccine stuff in Northern California. I think he'd be an obvious one. He would have other contacts that he might be able to lead into. And remember, you've got a strong audience.
Yes.
It's more effective when people who are within those districts that these people represent make a request, or several of them make a request of their representative, legislative and senatorial. My list would be, modest compared to what your own listeners could generate, even in your questions and comments within a show like this, or your showing of the thing. If you have a number of constituents of a particular senator or congressman, state or federal, who then make the request, would you consider, we're asking you to sign on to this petition asking President Trump and Ed Martin. And by the way, if you send something to Ed Martin, anything that you send to him over the weaponization of government should also be CC'd to Pam Bondi, by the way, for your people putting that together. That any inappropriate, unlawful use of federal or state money or resources to, in the course of blocking free speech of American citizens, lawful free speech, needs to be addressed and, where appropriate, prosecuted when violations of the law and employment stuff occurs. We want to know, just like Pam Bondi said, I want to know what disciplinary action is going to be taken against those FBI personnel who are blocking me from getting this stuff. We want to know in that letter to the president and to Ed Martin and CC DeBondi, we want to know what disciplinary action is going to be taken. We want to know the names of the people. We want that parent that are fired, let go from their work because of unlawful activity, unconstitutional activity. And then we want to know what actions are taken. Should they lose their retirement? Should they be fined? Should they face trial and possible incarceration, even for their unlawful activities? Remember, Congress did do some investigation on several occasions and found all sorts of unlawful activity. Who went to jail?
Right.
Who was prosecuted? Who lost their job? We don't want a repeat of that. We don't want to go out there with our briefcases waving in front of the tank, and then the tank goes on into town and people get killed.
Yeah,
we
no,
want to know what's going to be done to
I'm
stop
not
this
trying to
from
get
ever
killed.
happening again.
Yeah, I'm definitely not trying to get killed. I'm trying to kill the New World Order, and hopefully with your help.
I'm not saying that you're trying to get killed. I'm saying that that we want the tanks to
disappear.
And these machines are tanks. They're rolling over society. They're stopping America from being America.
Right.
So yeah, we got to stop that crap. So
well,
anyway.
I appreciate everything you could do. If I could put maybe Carol Maureen in touch with Matt and see if we can get some direct telephone numbers and maybe some introductions, that would be a good step in the right direction.
All right. Fair enough.
I'll do that then. Thank you, sir. I know it's late over there in Spain. Thank you for coming on last minute. I know the world looks like it's going to blow up, but we will be victorious. It is not.
No. We're actually. Let me just say this for everybody that's hand wringing out there.
Yeah.
What's going on at this exact moment is critical. Things that have been allowed to just continue to fester. You know, if you have an infection, it just festers endlessly. It can get into the bloodstream and kill you in short order. Bringing something to a head, not allowing it to continue to fester, and then bringing in real solutions is not wrong. The situation in the Mideast, the situation in Ukraine, the situation in Central Africa, South America, and what's coming in the Pacific. All of those situations are part of bringing them to some type of head and conclusion, as opposed to just letting them continue to fester. And Trump and the people around him are absolutely correct in doing it. It's just like what's happening with this situation on the communications and the media. It's a festering problem that must be addressed, curative actions taken, and heal the wound. We need to be able to function as Americans in an American-style environment and stop the crap. So bringing it to a head is exactly what has to happen, whether it's Iran or the media situation and free speech. It's time to put an end to all the bullshit, stop dancing around the bullshit, and kill the fucking bull.
Exactly. How important, last but not least, Juan, how important is the digital soldier in this fight to get this information out, the movie, the trailer, to override the algorithms, to literally steamroll over these bastards once and for all? How important?
Well, in the multiplication of energies, it's only a few steps from a handful of people to a majority of people, being in step in an operation. All it requires is that at the different levels, people continue to share. When you've got a good, solid message and it makes sense, and it's not being obstructed, um, you can get lots of eyes on it very, very quickly. I think that the reality is all you're really asking your audience and the other audiences that have yet to develop to continue to share and pass forward what, if they see it, they agree with it, you got to pass it along and share it with other people. Even ones that might not instantly want to agree with you, when you have a well articulated conversation argument like you have in the movie, even people that would at first blush disagree with you oftentimes turn around, they go, you know what, actually I changed my mind, I do agree with them. That's how you get people over and over again saying, you know what, I'm not going to be a Democrat anymore, I'm going to be a Republican. That's what happened with Reagan, because the arguments they presented didn't make sense. We've had that happen lots of times in other areas too. I'm not going to be a shot person. I'm going to be, vocal about the fact that this is not safe. How many people in this audience believed the scam and the media to begin with, and it made sense, and it's just a couple weeks, and now they're almost embarrassed to think that, gosh, I was that dense to even think this was okay. Granted, many in your audience never went along with it, but give room. When you're a victim of a really, really good con man, you almost feel guilty for, having been so easily conned, but that's the whole point. They're great con men. We have a whole class of people who are ultra professional con men, and they hold offices throughout the government surround us. And the revealing of that and the exposing of it, the shutting it down, is crucial. When people do agree with that, if you've made a good argument, your numbers will go up astronomically because they ascend to agree to those arguments, and they take them on, they personalize them. You probably actually don't have to over promote this. It will promote itself because it's something that's come of time. Trump would agree and back it because it's come of time, just like he'll agree with an executive order ordering all federal and military, especially agencies, to disclose what they have and know about things like the fires in California and Maui and other places. See, those were done by military weapons, military grade, that weren't just run of the mill. And the FBI, they don't have the investigative tools or resources to actually get in those places. It takes a military investigation to get inside those military operations, which are highly classified. The same is true of what you're addressing with this letter. It is not just those corporations that's doing this. This is weaponized by military mechanisms that have gone into the public sphere to control our conversations with military precision, military tools, military platforms, and access for intelligence operations, for management of the public against the Constitution, against the will of the people, without lawful authority. These agencies have been hijacked. That's what happened over at Homeland Security. That's what's happened in these agencies within Homeland Security. That's what the shadow government is trying to orchestrate and buy off and pay for against the Constitutional will of the people. You have to address it the correct way within what you're doing in order to get the right result. Let's get representatives on board. Let's get the president to sign an executive order shutting down all those agencies from being involved in this way against the Constitution, and let's go do prosecutions on the people that are acting unconstitutionally. It has to be a military investigation, not just civilian, not just FBI, not just a congressional board. The military must be involved, looking at the spy agencies, including CIA, including NSA, to get to the bottom of who's manipulating us and stopping free speech through these public access points and corporations.
Totally agree. And it turned out that it was a letter, then it was going to be an audio, and then I said, fuck it. Let's just make a full-blown documentary. I have no experience, obviously, in making a documentary. I've never made one in my entire life. So when you see this and it blows you away, you're going to say, how is it possible that a team of people came together and chose the right words in the right sequence with the right tone, with the right story that's going to get massive, massive attention? It's going to blow you away, minimum blow you away.
Yep. Beautiful.
Thank you for coming.
Americans doing what Americans do. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you. I'm going to show the documentary trailer one more time for people who just got here. Juan, you're more than welcome to go. I know it's late there in Spain. Again, thank you immensely for coming.
Well, I still got to eat my dinner. and I will tell you this. As I got up, the sprinkler came on here by my bench, so I guess I got the notice right on time to stand up and get out of the way, right?
Exactly.
The computer, the AIs were trying to get me. They were trying to rain on my parade.
Yes. But
my paper bag with my food in it would have been melted, unfortunately. So
exactly,
it was perfect timing. God himself got me off the seat with a little help from you right at the right moment. Thanks, Mel.
Thank you. I appreciate you, brother. And guys, get the link out everywhere. All right. Let's show these sons of bitches who is the real boss here. I'm going to play the documentary one more time for all you latecomers, and then you can go back and watch the whole thing from the beginning, because I think, and I know that Juan did an incredible job explaining what's going on in the world today and where we're headed. And yes, the future looks bright, Patrick. You know who Patrick is? Patrick Bet-David, one of my favorite podcasters.
All right. Beautiful.
In a nation founded on liberty, the right to speak is slipping away. From the airwaves to algorithms, America's voice is being stifled by corporations, by platforms, by fear.
Censorship. It's a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years.
One man dared to fight back with a letter to the president.
The idea of the letter turns into a full-blown documentary.
The American people are demanding to see arrests at this point because we have the proof beyond a shadow of a doubt. I want to see, I think I speak for the American people. I think you guys would agree. If we were to put together a really cool email, but not send the email because that email will never get sent, but turn it into an audio and put it all over the internet and have the patriots just move it out there, okay? Wow. I mean, like, let it spread out there like crazy until it gets to Donald Trump, and let them know the American people want to see fucking arrests. The people of the world want to see arrests. Because I'll tell you what, the people of other nations are waiting to invite in, okay, DOGE, because if you think it's only happening in the United States of America, you're making a big mistake.
His words sparked a movement among podcaster and various patriots, a call to reclaim free speech. I wrote to the president because silence isn't freedom, it's surrender. Silence No More follows one man's bold solution to confront censorship head-on and the ripple effect shaking the nation. This letter isn't just words, it's a challenge to the system. One letter, one voice, one chance to change everything.
We're not charging anything for the movie, guys. This is not a profit center for us. That's not the intent. The intent is I really am bent on fighting this New World Order, This is not about money. It's much bigger than money for me personally, and it's going to be stopped. Come hell over hot water. And I will tell you that I thank Maureen and Lisa Valentino for incredible. There's no way you could do this by yourself. It's impossible. This has got so many moving parts. I start these projects and then I beg for help because it requires help. It requires you, the patriots, getting out there and getting it out there like, like it's going like a wildfire that's out of control. And that's exactly what we need. We need you guys to step up, because when we pull together, we are so powerful, man. We are so powerful. They don't understand the power we hold. I do. And I know a lot of you do too. Thank you. God bless you all. And let's get this out there to the world. Thank you.